Oscar Piastri was dominating Qatar until his team made a call so disastrous, the FIA had to investigate. New official data reveals McLaren ignored live strategy models and left Piastri exposed on worn tires. The worst part? His radio proves he saw it coming and they didn't listen. Subscribe now, because if this is how the title fight ends, you're going to want front row seats for Abu Dhabi. Oscar Piastri had everything under control in Qatar. The pole position wasn't a fluke. It was the result of a perfectly tuned McLaren, relentless consistency, and a driver in complete command of every sector. From the moment the lights went out, Piastri delivered clean getaway, clinical tire management, and absolute dominance through Sector 2, where downforce and commitment separate the fast from the elite. Victory wasn't just possible. It looked inevitable. But then came the moment that flipped the race on its head. Lap 7. A safety car. A golden opportunity. Every top team jumped. Red Bull boxed Verstappen instantly. Mercedes and Ferrari followed without hesitation. Yet McLaren, with both cars in optimal position, froze. Piastri asked over the radio if staying out was the right move. The response? Stay out. We're maintaining track position. It was a call that would cost them everything. The data didn't lie. Every real-time strategy model from McLaren's own simulations to the FIA's live delta analysis pointed to the same conclusion. Boxing under the safety car was the only viable route to victory. The time saved under neutral conditions, combined with fresh tires and track evolution, meant that anyone who stayed out would be sacrificing the lead with no guarantee of recovery. And yet, McLaren defied it all. When Piastri eventually pitted on lap 24, it was already over. Verstappen had clean air, warm tires, and track position. McLaren had nothing but regret. Piastri came back out behind, no longer racing for the win, but stuck in second force to preserve his rubber and hope for a miracle that would never come. The camera showed him calm, but the silence on the radio told the truth. The trust had been broken. What makes it worse is that this wasn't a technical failure. It wasn't a driver error. It was a strategic collapse, engineered by hesitation. Piastri's performance didn't drop. The car didn't fade. The numbers didn't deceive. It was the decision-making, under pressure, that failed him. A race that should have tightened the title fight or even let it thrown away by the very people meant to back him. The FIA confirmed everything. Post-race reports labeled McLaren's move a critical misjudgment, backed by data charts, pit stop delta comparisons, and radio transcripts. The strategy didn't just cost Piastri a win, it exposed a team unsure of itself at the exact moment clarity was needed. In Formula 1, you don't get second chances when milliseconds define careers. Piastri wasn't outpaced. He was outplanned. Subscribe now, because if this is how McLaren folds under pressure, just imagine what's coming in Abu Dhabi. 1 race left, 3 title contenders, and no room left for mistakes. The 2025 Qatar Grand Prix was supposed to be a masterclass not just for Oscar Piastri, but for McLaren. All the signs were there. They came into the weekend with a car that fit the Lusail circuit like a glove. High-speed balance, low degradation, and peak aerodynamic efficiency gave them the edge over Red Bull in both long runs and one-lap pace. The qualifying session confirmed it. Piastri took pole with precision and margin. And by Sunday night, expectations were nothing short of victory. From the start, Piastri did exactly what was asked. He launched cleanly, kept Verstappen at bay, and began to build a consistent gap. Lap after lap, the MCL39 showed its strength. The key zones, especially through the fast sweepers in Sector 2, were owned by McLaren. The car rotated sharply, with minimal sliding and perfect weight transfer. Verstappen could keep up, but he couldn't attack. The tone of the race had been set, McLaren was in control. Then came the safety car. A midfield collision on lap 7 reset everything. This was the turning point. Every strategist watching the race knew what was about to happen. Pit windows were about to open early, and anyone who blinked would lose track position and control. Red Bull didn't blink. Verstappen boxed immediately. So did Ferrari. So did Mercedes. McLaren, though, made a decision that stunned even neutral observers. They stayed out. This choice wasn't subtle. It was a bold call that defied every live metric. Piastri stayed out. So did Norris. McLaren's pit wall gambled that maintaining track position would outweigh the tire and time advantages others were locking in. But the calculations were wrong. Lusail isn't a circuit where you can defend older tires against DRS trains and undercut advantages. And the FIA's live simulations were already showing that McLaren's approach came with a 70% probability of net position loss. Piastri himself questioned the call. His radio came through clearly. "Are we sure about this?" The response was calm, but it carried the weight of a decision made in haste. "Yes, stay out. Trust the plan." Those words will haunt McLaren for months. Because by the time Piastri finally stopped 17 laps later, Verstappen had built the necessary gap and was already gone. The lead, and the win, had been handed away. The context makes the mistake more painful. This wasn't a backmarker gamble or a midfield shot at luck. This was a team fighting for a championship, with one of the best performing cars of the season, and a driver executing perfectly. There was no need for risk. The data was clear. The grid had reacted. Yet McLaren committed to the exact opposite strategy, one that hadn't worked in similar situations all year. Qatar didn't demand creativity. It demanded control. In the space of one radio call, McLaren turned a dominant race into a salvage mission. Piastri finished second, yes. But it wasn't a second built through racing, it was a recovery from a tactical collapse. And now, with just one race to go, the impact is massive. The points lost in Qatar may be the exact difference that decides the World Championship in Abu Dhabi. This wasn't just a strategic failure. It was a turning point in the title fight. Once the race was over and the FIA published the sector data, pit deltas, and strategy timelines, the full picture emerged. Piastri's opening stint was almost flawless. From laps 1 through 16, his degradation curve remained among the flattest of any frontrunner. McLaren's McL39 was maintaining tire life exceptionally well, aided by clean air and the car's superior downforce package. On a normal day, that kind of performance would be a championship-level asset. But this wasn't a normal race because the strategy broke first. During the safety car window on lap 7, the majority of front-running teams boxed immediately. Red Bull brought Verstappen in and used the stop to switch to a balanced two-stop strategy, one that, crucially, preserved track position while minimizing tire degradation across the longest stint. Ferrari and Mercedes followed the same logic. McLaren, in contrast, stuck to a high-risk, high-degradation plan that hinged on defending the lead for as long as possible, a strategy the FIA confirmed had the lowest long-term win probability in their simulation tree. The FIA's post-race strategy chart detailed the Opportunity Loss Index, a relatively new metric assessing how much race time was sacrificed by not following optimal decision branches. McLaren's decision to stay out cost them the largest chunk of performance time in the top 5, a net loss of over 21 seconds. Piastri, through no fault of his own, rejoined behind Verstappen after his eventual stop on lap 24 and never got close again. Even more telling were the tire performance graphs. Verstappen's pace after pitting was immediately consistent, with lap time stabilizing in the mid-1:24s. Piastri, on the other hand, had to stretch his opening tire stint, and by lap 20, his pace had already dropped into the high 1:25s. That 1 second per lap differential wasn't just a number, it was the physical manifestation of the strategic error. The longer McLaren delayed the stop, the harder it became to recover that deficit. Radio data confirmed that Piastri was not only managing tires but questioning the logic. Multiple times during the safety car, he asked about the status of those around him. "Did Max pit?" he asked. Confirmation came. Then silence. Piastri's second query, "Do we stick with plan A?" was met with a brief, "Yes, trust the numbers." But those numbers clearly didn't match the live reality unfolding around them. By the time McLaren acted, it was reaction, not decision. And it wasn't just the lead that slipped. McLaren's decision also trapped Lando Norris in suboptimal traffic, eliminating the possibility of a secondary strategy or rear gunner support to back up Piastri. The FIA report even highlighted that Norris's pace would have allowed him to undercut Sainz had McLaren reacted in real time. Instead, both cars were locked out of contention for the win, proof that the poor call didn't just hurt Piastri. It undermined the entire team's weekend. In the end, McLaren's data systems weren't the problem. Their predictive models had the right. Red simulations showed the optimal route under a safety car between laps 5 and 10 was always to pit. What failed was execution. The information was available. The math was clear. But the humans behind the wall hesitated. And in Formula One, hesitation at 200 miles per hour is a luxury no team can afford. The McL39 entered the Qatar weekend as one of the most aerodynamically efficient cars on the grid, and it showed. McLaren's upgrades earlier in the season had paid off, particularly in high-speed corners. At Lusail, where average corner speed is among the highest on the calendar, the car's balance was near perfect. Oscar Piastri was able to attack each sector with total confidence, exploiting the aerodynamic load from the floor and the revised rear wing to maintain pace without overloading the tires. McLaren's strength in Sector 2, especially through turns 6 to 9, was the clearest example. Piastri consistently gained up to 0.2 of a second on Verstappen through these fast, sweeping sections. The car's stability at mid-corner and its ability to transition smoothly from turn-in to apex allowed him to stay on throttle longer, creating lap time without increasing tire wear. The RB21 couldn't match that rhythm. Verstappen had to lift more aggressively through those same zones. This wasn't just driver brilliance, it was engineering precision. McLaren's suspension geometry, particularly at the rear, allowed for strong rotation without sacrificing traction. Combined with a low-drag aero configuration, the car generated consistent downforce without dragging speed down the straights. This allowed Piastri to maximize both cornering speed and straight-line pace, a dual advantage that is rare in modern Formula One setups. What made this performance even more remarkable was how well the MCL39 preserved its tires. During FP2 long-run simulations, Piastri's degradation curve remained almost flat across 12 laps, even on the soft compound. In race conditions, the data confirmed similar behavior. His tire surface temperatures stayed below the critical thermal threshold through lap 16, while Verstappen's rears showed signs of overheating as early as lap 11. It was the kind of setup you build a win around. Everything, the mechanical grip, the aero stability, the clean launch from pole indicated that McLaren had found the sweet spot. Their simulations showed a race pace advantage of approximately 0.4 per lap once clean air was secured. That's why the team's strategic mistake wasn't just painful, it was self-sabotage. They had the faster car, the driver in rhythm, and the most stable tire window. The only thing missing was the right call at the right time. Piastri's execution matched the car's capability. His throttle traces were smooth, braking points consistent, and corner exit speeds among the highest of any driver across the weekend. He wasn't taking risks he didn't need to. The car was doing what it was built to do. That kind of harmony between machine and driver is rare. And that's what makes the strategic error so frustrating. It squandered a race where both human and machine were performing at their limit. McLaren's mistake in Qatar wasn't about being slower than Red Bull. They weren't. The lap charts, sector data, and tire profiles all say the same thing: McLaren had the superior package. What failed them wasn't the engineering department. It was the decision-making process during the race. And in a sport where championships are decided by razor-thin margins, failing to convert a dominant car into a victory is the kind of moment that defines seasons and sometimes careers.